far away. Lone autumn day. Yes, the leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade.
And welcome everybody to the Scenic City Sports Podcast on this Wednesday evening.
Brought to you by a sandwich that's
brought to you
and
by
I think that was a little trooper there.
Little sandwich eating gremlin back there.
She was daring to.
But welcome to Scenic City Sports. Glad
she
to
didn't
have
bring
you guys,
us one.
All with us. Yeah,
didn't get a bite.
Scott was successful in his mass campaign over the years to bring back potato cakes because Arby's has full-time brought back the potato cakes.
That was a 4-year
How much money you got invested?
Something that we all know and love. Now, if we
$3.2 million.
Now I need you on
worth every penny of it.
I need you on enchiritos and double-decker tacos at Taco Bell, and
you can do the
world.
double-decker if you swap out some stuff. My goal right now is to get back the chili cheese burritos to every Taco Bell.
Yeah, we have them in Florida.
And apparently down in Tampa earlier last month they were retesting. I don't know why you have to retest these things because everybody wants them. The potato logs coming back to KFC.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, if I could get the potato logs, what that's going to make me want the most? I want
Chicken
the
Littles.
original slider style Chicken Littles.
Yes,
the little patty.
39 cents on the bun with pepper mayonnaise.
You ain't gonna get them for 39 cents.
Well,
but I mean,
I don't care.
I'd pay $4 for one if I had to.
Yes.
If they brought me that
back.
back.
Way too much invested.
We actually
listen, man.
We actually stopped at the. It's not the original. It's a recreation now, but it's the Harlan Sanders Museum.
Yeah, up in
Corbin.
Yep,
on the way
we
home.
stopped there.
Really neat place. If you've
neat.
never been, if you're on that way, you can go through it. You don't have to stop and eat. You can go through it.
It's
Take
the
you about
original location
15,
of his
20
original
minutes.
gas station.
Yeah. And they've rebuilt the hotel, and there's a room in there kind of shows what the hotel looked like.
Yep.
Got the
the
recipe
kitchen.
on the board anymore?
No.
Well,
That does not supply the recipe.
It's got 2 bags of seasoning.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to get. I have it on my phone.
Well, you know the whole thing about 11 herbs and spices. The thing, the KFC's Twitter page follows 11 guys named Herb and Salt. Is the only people they follow.
Well, I've got I will show it to you guys later. I have got something that came from the Chicago Tribune, and it's a piece of paper written down. It said this was written on the back of a will, and it's got.
And they think it might be the 11
And
herbs.
Scott, I'm going to ask you. Scott went to Cleveland, Ohio.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And if you all ever want to go and you want to go on the coldest day of the year, let me know. I will tell you when to go because first time we went up about 6-7 years ago, it snowed the entire way. It was awful. This time it didn't snow, but it was 37 degrees, about a 35-mile-an-hour wind off the lake.
It makes it.
Luckily, it's inside.
I'm going to ask you this: We've always debated and expressed our opinions how inconsistent in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is. There's the same discrepancies in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Do they mirror each other in their inconsistencies?
Yeah. There are people that got inducted this year that I literally, and I'm a huge music fan. There were people that got inducted this year, 1 or 2 of them. I literally had no idea who they were.
Okay.
Well, and I had to look up stuff.
Well,
I'm like,
is it because now we know the reasons on MLB because we've got some writers that think.
I can tell you the reason on the
what
Rock
is
and
it?
Roll.
What is it?
The reason for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a long, long time, it was a committee of one.
Mm-hmm.
It was Jan Winter, who is the editor-in-chief of Rolling Stone magazine, and if he liked you and he liked the act that you did, you were going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. If he didn't like you, you weren't. That's why it took Rush all the years it took them to get in. That's why it took Jimmy Buffett Jimmy Buffett goes in based on him passing away when he should have been put in the Hall of Fame years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I know you're not a big Rush guy, but you can't.
You're telling me they got in.
Yes. Oh yeah. Almost
2013. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say over 10 years ago now, but there was, basically you had a committee of one.
Okay.
And that was it. I mean,
now, what is it now?
What you've got
branched out to
now because of.
Do we let legends in the game?
There's a full
say?
Committee now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
fan vote.
There's a fan vote. There is a
like
legends.
baseball.
It's not the legends vote now, but it's like when Buffett passed away, he went in posthumously. Literally after he passed that year, or just this past year, they've got that kind of like that veterans exemption. Basically, they've got that very same thing going. So, and
there was a lot of head scratching. I think last year when Dolly Parton got put in it, even by her own accord, she didn't know why she gotten put in it.
Yeah.
In that respect, and I mean, she tried to do her best as far as saying and accepting it, but she didn't know really why she would have been up for that.
Well, and she put out a rock and roll album, and let's be real honest. I mean, it's as tongue in cheek and you can possibly get. It's not terrible. Dolly doesn't do anything that isn't at least serviceable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bad. She did a pretty good job covering all the songs that she covered. I've got a special edition of it on vinyl, but Dolly is forever going to be remembered for a handful of absolute country bangers that I mean, and the crazy thing, my favorite Dolly fact I've ever been told is that she wrote I Will Always Love You and Jolene, which are basically her two most recognizable songs, within hours of each other on the same day.
Yeah.
Oh, she's having a good day.
Yes, I Will Always Love You was written because she was going to Porter Wagner, who had basically discovered her and made her a star on his show, and that was her going to Porter to say, listen, I'll always love you, but I have got to spread my wings and fly. And then, of course, Jolene, if you believe the story, it was written about a bank teller in the town that her and Carl lived in, that she didn't like the way that she looked at her man. And all I can ever say is, if you've ever seen pictures of Dolly back then, if Dolly looked like that, I want to know what Jolene looked like. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
But yeah, it is, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is frustrating. It really is, because there are acts that, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a fan of a lot of these bands. Why they're not in on the first time, like the Dave Matthews Band, for instance. Why that band didn't go in on Opportunity 1 blows my mind. Because their fan base alone is humongous.
It was like Ozzy got
Fish
in
is
this
another
year.
one. Fish will be up this year.
Yeah.
There's no reason they shouldn't go in the first time
Ozzy
around.
got in with Black Sabbath.
Yes.
But
it took him forever as a solo.
yeah, why?
Yeah.
That guy should have been in.
You got to give him
years
credit
ago.
for body of work.
Then again, there was, and I like this band. Don't get me wrong, but is Kool and the Gang
Yeah, Hall of Fame worthy.
Hall of Fame worthy?
So
I mean,
when you go
they had
through
about
the-
a 10-year period where they were good.
Scott, we
But
go.
I don't
You
know.
tour
I don't know.
the facility. You've got plaques of every one of these.
Yeah, so if you've never been and you go in, the first level is pretty much the gift shop and the restaurant and stuff like that. They got a huge staircase that goes up, and it's kind of confusing. The staircase only goes up so far, and to get to it, you got to take an escalator to get up, and then you can take the escalator up into another floor, and then you have to take other stairs. It's the way it's designed is
But there's a lot of folks in this
Kinda weird.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
oh yeah.
They induct about 5 a year, don't they?
Yeah, but so you go through, and it basically tells you the history of rock and roll. You go through these different displays, really on the kind of the main floor, and it goes from everything from country, western to bluegrass to blues to Motown, and then it's just like a chronological order, And then they kind of break it off, and here's what was going on in Los Angeles. Here's what was going on in San Francisco. Here's what was going on in Cleveland. Here was going on in Seattle. So you go through all of that. Then you kind of go into a place where they have exhibits for certain people, and some of these they really don't rotate these. But there's like a Michael Jackson, and there's an Elvis, and there's a Chuck Berry and Rolling Stones and Beatles and there's others that probably should be there and there's not.
Who's the obvious, the dead obvious that he or she got passed over, and their careers maybe ended a long time ago and they got passed over? Anybody pop into your head?
We were actually looking at that coming home as who's not in that probably should be.
No, nobody that you just think's an obvious that got done wrong, like MLB does. Maybe there probably is.
Yeah,
there probably
yeah.
is.
Like Billy Idol, for instance.
I mean,
He's not in.
Not in. Okay. Billy Idol,
and his career
be.
ended quite a ways back.
Yeah, he's still touring. I mean, and there's countless other people that should be in that aren't in, and then, like I said, and then there's some that got in that I'm like, I still know who you are.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the one that, I mean, I'm looking at the list that just popped up right here. This is just, it's talking about how certain genres of music get overlooked.
Iron Maiden, that was the one.
And Iron Maiden comes out immediately. Megadeth is another one. You know, Scorpions, I'm not really, but, you know, Linkin Park, the White Stripes.
Scorpions have been going on for like almost 7 days.
So here's 145 artists not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I was going to just kind of flip through this one because I know some of the Bryan Adams. I mean, a lot of hits.
I know somebody that just saw him in Vegas last week said he was awesome.
Alice in Chains, one of the founding father grunge bands. That's one of the absolute best one. Greg Allman of the Allman Brothers Band.
Yeah,
not fabulous. Allmans are not in.
No, the Allman Brothers Band is. Greg Allman as a solo is not, and he had just as good of a solo career as the Allmans had. America, I'm not going to necessarily follow you on that. When America had a couple of big hits, but if it hadn't been for the fact that George Martin was their producer, I don't know that they would have been near as successful as they were. Anthrax on the hard rock side, I'll give you that one. Argent, I'm not really crazy about that one. Asia is one that should have had some consideration. Bachman Turner Overdrive, you know, a couple of decent hits there. Bad Company, there's one that I would say, that should be Bad Company for sure. Let's see, Badfinger, Beck.
BTO's not.
BTO is not. Now these are people
who
are not.
They had a lot of hits at one time.
They did
at an era.
Beck, there's somebody that, based on album number 1 alone, that guy produced that album for less than $1,000, and it went like 3 or 4 times platinum.
Yeah.
I mean, let's see, the B-52s, one of Georgia's own. That's a travesty right there. The Black Crowes, another travesty. How those guys are not in.
I think they get in.
Blackfoot, Blind Faith, one of Eric Clapton's super bands. That band had Clapton, Steve Winwood, and Ginger Baker were all in that band. And then famous bassist Rich Gretsch, who, the Gretsch guitar happens to be named after.
Well, let me ask you this. Is Winwood in on his own?
Don't think he is. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Blue Cheer. We'll see. I mean, Blue Oyster Cult. I don't know that they're Hall of Fame worthy. John Bon Jovi's a solo. I'm sorry. That's one solo album does not beget you a Hall of Fame.
Hold it now.
I know. Audrey's
this is why we went.
Audrey's gonna call and raise Cain. But,
this is why we went, because they got a 40th anniversary now. And here's the thing too about the Rock Hall of Fame. They have exhibits, but they replace them from time to time. So, like, one time we were there, we didn't get to see. This time we get to see like 50 years of hip hop, which was really tough. But they had the Bon Jovi exhibit. Now they're going to remove that eventually and make room. The next big exhibit they got coming in is 50 years of Saturday Night Live musical guests.
Nice.
So they're going to show that, and then they've got a few others here and there. But there's a place. It's called the Garage, where you go in there and you can get guitars or drum sets, and you can jam. You can learn how to do stuff. They got some like rock and roll.
What do they charge to get in?
Pinball machines. I think it's.
You think? Would you sneak
30, in? I want to say it's $30 or $35.
No, he's like me. He don't carry the money in his family.
Yeah.
Boston is on the list.
Yes. Good Lord.
I mean, these are ones I'm not even going to name some of these because
Boston's not in either.
Boston is not in. Joe Cocker is not in. That's a surprise. Phil Collins as a solo artist. That's a travesty right there.
There's an obvious.
Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
There's obvious ones.
I mean, that's 4 Hall of Famers right there individually. Why in the world are they not in? Not necessarily. Roger Daltrey of The Who is a solo. I'm not necessarily. Spencer Davis Group, that's one that surprises me a little bit. That's the predecessor, that's the first incarnation of any band with Steve Winwood in it, was the Spencer Davis Group. Derek and the Dominoes, Clapton's ode to George Harrison's wife. That was a all-star band.
Yeah.
Clapton, one of the Almonds, great. Let's see, Rick Derringer, nah. Devo, a couple of big hits in the 80s.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame worthy, I don't know. Ronnie James Dio, again, one really big album, not really much after that. I think a lot of his personal stuff is what keeps him out. He's a little on the eccentric
Andrew
side.
Jones in that one?
I like Dio.
I mean, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Let's see, the Fabulous Thunderbirds. I
like them. They had one hit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Flaming Lips, huge following, but I don't know that they're Hall of Fame worthy.
Now, you just said something a minute ago.
Fogerty, there's one.
Fogerty's not in?
Not in there as a
Not
solo. He is with Creedence, but not as a solo. Foghat, Free, Ace Frehley is a solo.
Did you say John...
Jay Giles.
Jay Giles band. Now, there's one that should be in.
Bon Jovi had only one album in his career?
As a solo artist, he only had one solo record that I know of, and that's the soundtrack to a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, David Gilmour as a solo artist, famous Pink Floyd frontman. I don't necessarily. I mean, he had a golden earring, Grand Funk, Railroad.
Well, there's some obvious ones.
The Guess
there.
Who. There's a band that needs consideration. That's a nice little run in the '70s. Some good hits.
Now another exhibit.
Sammy Hagar as just the red rocker himself. I mean,
another exhibit they got going up there right now, which is really cool. It's 1984, and this is like the height of MTV, and it's got, if you've seen some of my pictures, if you follow me on Facebook, there's Eddie Valen's guitar. There's Eddie Valen's guitars
Van
and
Halen.
amps.
Spring Break in Daytona Beach?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Prince's guitar.
I can relate.
Like Michael Jackson's Thriller jacket.
He sent me the one I needed to see. He sent me Jerry's guitar.
Yeah. I mean, they've got all these different guitars from all these people.
Jerry who?
Jerry Garcia.
Oh.
I mean, just anybody that you can think of from
Michael
that MTV
Hurston will not be
Madonna,
happy about this one, but Don Henley is not
Oh,
in
yes.
the Hall of Fame. Hole, Humble Pie, Billy Idol, you already said. In Excess, there's one. How are they not?
How many hits does Henley have outside the Eagles?
Several.
Does he?
Boys of Summer, Into the Innocence,
Dirty Laundry.
yeah.
He's got a bunch.
A lot of the ones you said there,
the James Game.
Phil Collins not being
Phil
in
Collins, that
solo,
kills me.
That's amazingly
Let's
there.
see.
that you
Kansas,
overlook
Korn, Lenny Kravitz. These are newer ones that are going. Cyndi Lauper.
that. And the sad part about
Annie
Collins,
Lennox.
he's getting a poor health.
Oh, there's your one right
Yeah.
there.
He's not even gonna be able to go.
Huey
and
Lewis in the
acknowledge when they
News.
put him in.
That's
a travesty.
That is will always
mean-
album Sports had what 5 number 1 hits,
Yes.
6 number 1 hits.
They can
10
thank
songs.
Huey Lewis in the News can thank MTV for putting them on the map.
Yeah.
Marshall Tucker, Southern Ties, Meatloaf is not a Hall of Famer. That's a surprising one.
I don't get that either.
Molly Hatchet, the Monkees.
They got royalties on a show.
Motley
They don't need
Crue
that.
deserves to be
come
in
on.
there. Motorhead deserves to be in there. I'm looking at some of these. I'm like, New York Dolls, maybe.
Yeah, I think the
Night
Dolls-
Ranger. No, thank you. That they're not. I mean, Harry Nilsson.
I like Night Ranger.
Oh, I like them too, but I'm not saying they're Hall of Fame worthy though. I mean, that's
They're on the edge.
no, sir. Nugent. I mean, no. Sorry. Oasis. If they stay together longer than 2 albums, they probably deserve to be a Hall of Famer. But 2 albums and a fist fight.
But you got groups now that are coming along that are not Hall of Fame worthy yet, but yet their promise says they will be. And then you got this backlog.
There's Poison. Basically, they're just all against the
we
hair
got
metal
this
bands.
backlog here
Iggy Pop.
of folks that are going to get passed, kind of like what keeps happening to Del Murphy, and
His brother Daryl.
Andrew.
REO Speedwagon.
REO's not in it.
Nope. I mean,
Okay.
You know, David Lee Roth is a solo artist. Satriani, just off his musicianship alone, it's, you know.
Yeah.
And I will get. You know, I wasn't thinking about Scorpions. That you know, you are right. I mean, 40 years worth of.
Oh, it's like almost 7 decades.
Slayer and Motorhead. I mean, those are the founding fathers of speed metal.
I mean, let me look that up because I honestly think the Scorpions started in the 60s.
Smashing Pumpkins.
And they're still playing.
You're telling me 60 years worth
Soundgarden.
and it hasn't been put in there.
Billy
Somebody
Squier
don't think
is
much
not
of
a
them.
Hall of Famer.
I mean,
Steppenwolf.
you got longevity there, but obviously, did they make enough hits to fall in that
Yeah, here Scorpions were founded, a German hard rock band founded in Hanover in 1965.
How is Sting not in there as a solo artist?
So we're talking 60 years.
Now,
60s,
okay.
70s, 80s, 90s.
Here's you one right here.
Yeah,
that,
like 7 or 8 decades.
Now, obviously, some of these that are on this list are coming to the point of where they're going to be. You know, a lot of the hair metal bands are eligible now. A lot of the early grunge metal bands are all eligible now. But here's you one right here that this one's going to cause some debate. How in the hell is Styx not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Now, I mean, I know that, a lot of people are not crazy about the prog rock kind of, operatic kind of sound, the concept albums, that kind of stuff.
Yacht rock.
But if you're
eligible since 1998.
Yeah, how the hell do you not put Styx in there when you got? I mean, yacht rock.
When was their heyday? 70s.
Styx, late 70s, early 80s, all the way up. I mean, Mr. Roboto was to me the worst album they ever put out, and that was around 86, I think, somewhere in that range.
So that would have been their MTV stuff.
I mean, 38 Special, one of the Van Zant boys. Three Dog Night is not in there. Tool will eventually be in. Here's the one that kills me. Now, I'm sorry. I'll piss some people off when I say this, but how you don't put Toto in there? Listen, say what you want to.
I know you're talking about you would piss off, but he ain't here.
Say what you want to. You take that band.
Is Seeger in?
And you watch. He's not on the list.
Okay.
You watch that. No, Seeger is in. You watch that yacht rock documentary, and you see them tell you that the band Toto, between the entire band, has almost 1,000 credits on albums.
Well, and what's interesting about that documentary, I watched it myself. Yeah. You almost start to. It reminded me a little bit about when we watched that one on Nashville. Yeah. How they start with these in-house musicians, and they use them for all these different genres. Yeah. Yep. Because they can play anything. And then what happened was you take about a half a dozen to 10 of them, and they ended up being part of a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Michael O'Donnell being one of them. Is he in there?
Michael McDonald? Yeah, he is. Okay. Yeah, he's in as a solo, and he's in as part of
the Dukes. To me, Toto and Boston are right there together. Yeah. Because just of the dadgum musicianship, if you just listen to the music, good night, those guys can play.
You take Toto, for instance.
And their albums are great.
Toto was basically the album Thriller should be Toto with special guest Michael Jackson. Because they are the backing band for that entire album. Toto, the musicians in Toto are playing all the music on that album, and Michael is doing the vocals. Human Nature was written by one of the guys in Toto who had put it on his solo album. And it goes on to be a huge hit for Michael Jackson.
And then, by the way, we got this guy named Eddie that wants to play a solo.
Yeah, Eddie wants to play, he wants to play on Beat It With You. I mean, if that's okay. But I mean, the thing about the yacht rock documentary that really is funny to me, and this is not meant to be racial in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's hilarious to see guys like Thundercat and Questlove and all of them talking about, we didn't know these guys were white. Until we went down to the music store to buy the album and we saw them, we were like, you mean those guys are white? Those guys made great music. But you take that yacht rock thing that cracks me up about that documentary is guys like Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald.
Steely Dan.
And Steely Dan. They don't want no part of being called yacht rock.
He had a big pulse in the whole thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. His fingerprint was on a lot of that stuff.
I mean, the album, and I own an original copy of this record. The album Asia by Steely Dan. It's black cover, Red down the front has that's the album that has what's the one about they call Alabama the Deacon Blues is on that record. 3 or 4 of their biggest hits are on that record. And there's a story in that documentary to where they went through something like 10 guitar players until they could get this one particular solo played exactly how they wanted.
I think I do remember that.
Like 10 different... The best studio musicians they could find could not come in and play that.
And you remember when we were watching that one on Nashville?
Yes.
They kind of started that way. Everybody would come in and
Yes.
cut an album, but these are the musicians.
Yes.
Because you ain't going to go find any better.
Well, I mean, you take... How many albums did Glenn Campbell play on before he was Glenn Campbell? How many records did Chet Atkins play on before he was considered one of the greatest guitar players that's ever lived? Even in like 80s and 90s Nashville, artists like Patti Loveless and Martina McBride and Vince Gill to some extent got their start singing background and playing guitar and all that and go on themselves to have ginormous solo careers because somebody gave them a chance.
Yeah.
And that's what, now this will tick some people off because I know it, because there's a lot of you out there that love all those, American Idol and Who Wants to Be a Star and blah, 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 some kind of competition.
Star Search.
Some kind of competition. The majority of all the people that come off of those shows, there's only been a handful out of all of them that have won that have been good.
Yeah, but really, even as great as they are crowned on that thing,
yes.
they can't find a way to get traction on that.
When we go back and we look at the artists that did it the old-fashioned way, they went out and they put together a band, and as Dave Grohl says in a really famous quote that he's got, it's, you go find 5 buddies and you go out to a bar and you suck. And you suck for 3 or 4 years because you're learning how to be a band and how to play your music. And then maybe the right person hears your songs and they realize, you know what, these guys got a chance.
Yeah.
And then you go out, and because you're grateful, you become what you can become. I mean, if you believe the stories, Nirvana was basically living on the street when Nevermind hit. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, it's the biggest album in the land and they're all millionaires.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way,
all it takes.
You just never know.
Alabama.
Yes. I mean, Alabama was a house band at a local bar in Fort Payne. I mean,
one guy heard him one night.
Yep, one night. Just happened to hear the way they used to lay in bed. They had real thin walls in the apartment. They say they used to lay there in bed and harmonize. The 3 main members harmonize with one another just to go to sleep at night. Those are the things that I feel like music in the modern era has lost. And that Yacht Rock documentary does a good job of bringing that up. And it was talking about the fact that when MTV came along, you couldn't be ugly anymore. Is what they all say in there. They're like, when MTV came along and everybody knew what you looked like,
yeah, there's some
that became a different equation in the whole picture.
Yeah.
You couldn't just be talented. Because, I mean, let's be honest.
There was some ugly
Steely Dan is one of the greatest rock bands of all time. But Donald Fagen and the other, I never can't think of the other guy's name, neither one of them are pretty at all.
Well, and just like a lot of musicians, I mean, even some of the ones we think so highly of, Prince has got some great music, but he's got some quirky stuff too that just don't hit. But Steely Dan's was that way. He had some major hits, but he had a bunch of stuff that you think, well, why would you put that on a record?
Prince wrote so many people's hit songs.
Yeah, he wrote for others too.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he did. He gave away some of his.
And with any luck, I don't have the ticket secured yet, but we're working on because we can't get them until like a certain 90-day window.
Oh yeah.
But this early July, I will be at Paisley Park.
They're gonna go to Paisley Park.
Who's they?
Him and Andra and
her mom.
Going to Minnesota.
Well, we will be at Paisley Park.
Not spray in the walls or anything like that. I mean, graffiti wise.
Whatever they let me to do, I will probably. Matter of fact, I just picked up because I didn't buy it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because I'm like, I don't want to spend $25 on a book I can get at the library. I just picked up the making of Purple Rain.
Well,
the book. So I'll be reading that.
Talking about Prince, a couple of things. Number one, if those of you out there that are fans of the show and everything don't know this, Prince they are re-releasing on a limited run Purple Rain back into theaters for the 35th anniversary, I think at this point, 40th anniversary, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like
they are going to re-release the
40th,
movie.
yeah.
They're going to play it in IMAX.
Well, let me tell you, it came out in the mid...
Like 84, 85, I think, somewhere in that range.
That would be more closer pulling in on 40 years.
But the other thing I was going to say is, imagine being the Bangles for a minute. You're a young, all-female group trying everything you can to get out there and get your name out there, and all of a sudden, you just get a phone call one day.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, I wrote a song for you, and I'd really like for you guys to record it. And that's Manic Monday, which goes on to be, one of their 3 or 4 biggest hits. But it happened because Prince saw them, liked their sound.
He chose them for the song.
And just said, you girls could do real well with this.
Tevin Campbell, you remember Tevin Campbell? That was his stuff. Also, a little bit of trivia about Purple Rain. The old Video Park in Fort Oglethorpe. You remember Video Park?
I do.
That was the first movie we ever rented with a VCR.
Oh my God.
We bought a VCR from them. Dad bought it that day. Bought the camera, the whole setup, probably like $3,000 worth of video equipment.
Well, I can say
and
this.
And then boom, we
where you two
rented.
can. I saw it when it hit the movies.
Yeah.
I didn't even pay for
see
that
it at the
because
theater.
I knew the guy that was the manager.
Yeah.
I won't reveal his last name. His first name was Frank, but he let people sneak in.
It was considered a little risque for a child of my age at the time when it came out, because I was in '84. That would have put me in 4th grade.
Yeah,
so it was a little.
You wouldn't have had.
Our next door neighbor was obsessed with Prince, and we were like, I don't know if she saw it in the theater, but the rest of us obviously didn't because our parents weren't going to take us. But we rented it. And we watched it.
Well, and I just said this to my wife Kim the other day, that I think some of the major hits of decades ago, whether it be Smokey and the Bandit or anytime somebody brings that back to the big theater, and not only introduces that to a new generation, but the old generation might be interested as well that saw it. I think that's a no-brainer.
I can say
I don't know why they don't do it more often.
Smokey and the Bandit was the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater with my parents.
Well, why would that
1978.
Well, it would be Kick-Ass again.
Oh,
put it out there.
absolutely.
Actually, it was 77.
77, yeah, sorry.
Just put it
yeah.
back
Because what movie replaced it at the top of the box office?
Godfather, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
Star Wars.
Star Wars? Yep.
And wait, May 25th, 2027 is the 50-year debut of Star Wars.
Well, you do know that they are.
That will be all over.
You know they are about to bring back out Episode 3.
Yes.
With a special edition Darth Vader popcorn bucket. It's
I'll
coming
be there.
out here pretty soon.
Well,
I'll be there.
And when they do that, do they digitize the movie to bring up an up-to-date quality?
They normally go in and
what we saw it then, we
Yeah.
said, well, it's quality. We see it now, we say that's not quality.
I hope. Part of me hopes they don't.
Yeah.
It is kind of
Because that was
seeing it in its original form does.
that was the first movie I ever remember seeing in
Yeah.
a theater, and that when that Star Destroyer
Oh.
comes over,
and
I
you
was
hear
like,
that rumble. I remember the first time.
I'd wanted to see it for months, and it was sold out every time.
The 3 of us are all of an age that we've watched all this entertainment technology come alive in our lifetime. We all go back to remembering when albums were first out. We remember 8-track tapes. We remember reel-to-reel video. We remember
singles.
we remember Betamax. We remember all that stuff. And what I was going to say is I remember the first time that I spent my own money and I bought a surround sound to go in my room. I'd been out of school for a year or so. Was still living at home with mom and dad. My wife and I were just dating at the time. It was actually, I'll take that back. It was a couple of years after I graduated. My wife and I were dating at the time, and I bought a surround sound system for my room. And the first movie that I wanted to put in that surround sound,
Smokey and the Bandit.
no, was Star Wars.
Was Star Wars? Yeah, I
it
can
was
see that, yeah.
absolutely with Star Wars, because I remembered as a kid that feeling of sitting in the movie theater and hearing that Star Destroyer go over the top of my head.
Well, we've had discussions on this
Chills.
before of the soundtracks of movies
Oh, my
that
God.
were so important, that those
Yes.
soundtracks were so good
Yes.
about them, and that would be very difficult to sit down and make a top 25
Oh my God,
in that respect. But there's some obvious ones too.
There are. I mean, but the funny thing to me when you start talking about soundtracks is occasionally you get the situation where the movie sucked, but the soundtrack's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, like the one that always comes to mind right off the top of my head is the movie Cocktail. You know, Tom Cruise signed on to do this movie where he was, you know, this high-end bartender, and they, you know, flipped the shakers and the bottles and all that kind of stuff. But that soundtrack basically brought the Beach Boys back
Yeah.
to another generation of kids. I mean,
Brought it
Kokomo is on
Let's
there.
brought it back to life.
The Fabulous Thunderbirds are on that
Yeah.
that contract, or on that soundtrack. There is 4 or 5 really good songs that all charted off that soundtrack, and that movie is a garbage movie, but the soundtrack to it is incredible.
Well, there's a bunch. There's just a tremendous amount of movies. You know, when you start talking a lot of the Bond series, I mean, they never hardly missed on
No,
soundtracks.
oh no, no,
And it was important to them.
absolutely.
I mean, they understood that. You know, Forrest Gump had a tremendous soundtrack.
oh my God, that
I mean, it's just one star after another.
I think
involved in
Forrest
that.
Gump, that might very well be the greatest singular soundtrack that's ever been put out. I mean, because it's just such a span of music.
I one of my favorite soundtracks, and the movie is pretty good, but the Dazed and Confused soundtrack
Oh yeah,
is so good.
That is a
If
great
you've never
one.
heard it. All music from the 70s. It's awesome.
Well, why he went out there with Forrest Gump, because there was not a
you couldn't
there
pigeonhole it to
wasn't
one.
there wasn't just one
Oh, no.
person. They had a genre of folks they used.
There was
in that.
Elvis on there. You had the Beach Boys were on there. You had Dylan was on that soundtrack. You've got Wilson Pickett's on that soundtrack, all the way up to Seeger, and you know, all the way up into the '80s. You've got, you know, spanning the story. But you know, what I would say is think about movies where the movie's good, the movie's real good, but the soundtrack takes a good movie and makes it even better. Like, to me, a good example of that is especially the first 2 Beverly Hills Cop movies.
Yeah, yeah.
The movie's great, and I mean, and you can take the soundtrack out of it, and the movie's still going to be great, because Eddie was awesome at that time. But the songs that they chose for that movie just made it that much better.
And Scott, when you're talking about Star Wars, all that music was composed basically from the person that put that.
Yeah,
John Williams.
Yeah.
So they didn't go outside.
Nope.
With other music.
Never have.
And-
Never have. That's
and-
all original scores.
And it's great music to go with that. But you know, when you start comparing that to what Rusty was just using about Forrest Gump and all these other 15, 20 different stars that were involved in their music, it's kind of hard to compare the two.
Yeah, and nobody was really had done that in years before, you know, George Lucas said, well, that's what I want. I want a score. I don't want a soundtrack. And it's gone platinum. I mean,
And you know, he really
it's awesome.
did that with all of his epic, you know, all of his adventure movies. He did that very same thing, because all the Indiana Jones movies, you know, there's not really any.
There's none.
There's a song or two that pops up in the movie, like if the radio's playing or something. But I mean, for the most part, you know, those movies are done. But I mean, there is nobody of a certain age that when they hear bum ba dum bum bum ba dum, don't know that that's you know,
I'll tell you what,
Indiana Jones.
2 of my favorite soundtracks are in movies that I don't know how well they did at the box office. The Color of Money.
Oh yeah,
I love that soundtrack. And if back in the 80s, this movie came on one time, and I remember watching it, and then we recorded it and probably watched it a billion times, and I got the soundtrack. If you've ever seen the movie Vision Quest,
I knew that was where you were gonna go.
the high school wrestler.
Yep.
Oh, it's a good movie anyway, but that soundtrack,
I gotta
is
ask.
so good,
A couple of years ago,
so good.
of course, with Donnie Welburn being our wrestling coach. I went to a match one night, and Donnie, it was pre-match. We were waiting on some stuff to take place, and Donnie was like, "Hey man, you're great with music." He goes, "Once you hook your phone up and play some music in the place for us." And I was like, "All right." So I'm playing, the typical hype up stuff that anybody would play, little AC/DC, little this, little that. So nobody's paying attention.
I know what you got to play.
And I throw on Lunatic Fringe by Red Rider, which is the main song from Vision Quest. And I immediately get a text message, "Dude, that's awesome," because
I get chill bumps thinking about that song.
If you're a high school wrestler of that era, that probably was the song.
Oh God.
Well, you couldn't play some of the Stone Cold's music.
No, I mean you different kind of wrestling, but you have
Madonna. "Crazy for You" is on it, which is one of her greatest songs ever. There's "Journey" on that. I can go on and on and on.
Well, I mean, there's so many, and then you take a movie. I'll give you a good modern movie that to me had a really great soundtrack, and that was the second Tron movie, Tron Legacy, because you had the really cool electronic music soundtrack that was done by Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails and Atticus Ross, which was great. But then you also mixed in, there was some Journey on that. There was some REO Speedwagon on that when they were in the arcade, some of the parts of the movie where they were in other places. It was kind of like that melding of, we're going to take the George Lucas method, and then we're also going to take the Robert Zemeckis method. We're going to put them together and see what we come out with. And you wound up with this really great soundtrack. And that's kind of been, in the modern era of movies, that's been more the thing. You put a little bit of music, a little bit of pop music, and you kind of see what comes out of it. And it really, it's just, we're all music guys. Everybody on this show, anybody that's involved with Scenic City Sports, really, we're all music people. And to me, that if you are not the type of person that music gets you through aspects of your life, I don't know that you're the kind of person I want to hang out with. I mean,
you drawing a line in the sand over there?
I mean, look, man, I'm telling you,
you're gonna build a fence.
That's right. As somebody that has been through the things that I've been through in my lifetime, music has gotten me through a lot of that. There's a lot of times when something happens and there's that one song that you can latch onto that just really heals. I mean, everybody, it's a cliche song at this point now, at this point in time, but everybody can listen to "Go Rest High on That Mountain" by Vince Gill, and if that song don't elicit some sort of reaction out of you, then you just ain't got heart.
You might be clinically dead.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a handful of songs that the minute you hear them start, you're going to feel something.
Well, and that translates into sports songs as well.
Yes.
Like Fogerty.
Yes. Center field.
Which was played at Stump Martin's at funeral. And
yes.
It was the intro to Stump on Sports.
Forever.
For a long time, too. But if you've ever played any of the sports, you recognize.
Yep.
You recognize what the meaning behind that song is, too. A little bit of sports. Unexpected. Coaching change up at the Blue Raiders of Cleveland this week. I don't know. I've heard the story of why that came about, but I hate to repeat it if it's not accurate, and it may have a lot of accuracy in it as what took place. But tremendous hire they got in Chris Brown. Yeah. Now, I'd forgotten about Coach Brown actually having some time at Cleveland before he came down here to Red Bank. I'd actually forgotten that. Baylor's loss, certainly, in losing a quality guy and a football man as well. And Cleveland's game, they've ran through some good coaches up there at Cleveland. They really have. They've been looking for Benny Monroe since Benny Monroe left.
Yeah.
And I really think things have changed administratively since those days, too, that makes it somewhat difficult for coaches to have been totally successful. But I remember something that last year's coach talked to me about twice when we interviewed him 2 different times. He talked about how low his roster was to play in that league. 52 men on the roster.
Yeah.
And he says,
That's
we
not
go
much.
up against the Maryvilles that have 100, the Farragut's that have 100. And we're not where we need to be on a roster standpoint. So he was trying. You can never get it totally fixed in 2 years, by no means. He had some crucial injuries down the stretch last year. Probably you could argue out of his top 5 players, 3 of them were on the sidelines. And that was a big miss as the season went on. They beat Bradley 14-13. They actually break a 9-year string. He seemed like he was doing a good job himself. Maybe some misfortunate things took place that he lost that position. I'm not even sure he really meant to lose that position, based on what I've been told. But something might have backfired on him in that respect. But Chris Brown, just a super hire, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and when I heard of that loss up there, I immediately thought of Coach Brown. I thought, Bo, you better latch onto that one.
We talked about it as soon as that happened. We were texting, it's like, hey, this just happened. And the next text I think we got was, what about Chris Brown?
Well, there's the guy. I mean, don't let him find another home somewhere else.
And you've got, they're going to have 3 really good coaches in Bradley County. With Damon Floyd and with Drew and now with Coach Brown.
Yeah.
That's
and I think Coach
good.
Tygart was doing a really good job up there. The one thing that he addressed, he told me on 2 different occasions, they do have to get their numbers up. If you're going to play in that league with all that depth on every team you're playing, basically, you got to get your numbers up.
Yeah. Let me ask you a
Ask me.
trivia question. Heard this today. 25 years ago today, April 9th, 2000.
Okay.
Twins versus Royals. I think the final score was like 13-10, 13-11, something like that.
Oh, Lord.
Minnesota wins.
Okay.
That game goes down in history because something happened during that game that had never happened in the history of baseball, and it hasn't happened since.
First thing that comes to mind is an unassisted triple play, but I know that's not it.
No.
Series of home runs.
You're on the right track.
Pitchers didn't get to swing the bat back then, so let's rule them out.
Same guy hit 2 home runs in the same inning?
Nope.
Well, obviously it was a 13-10 scoring affair, so that you would think there was some production at the plate that took place, more so than pitching.
4 home runs in a row?
Very close.
5 home runs in a row?
No. Lower. We're playing the clock game.
Oh, 3 home runs in a row?
3 home runs in a row by both teams.
Wow. Yeah, that's...
Don't happen often.
Wow. Yeah, that's...
Never happened before,
Wow.
never happened since.
Yeah,
but
that's
that
really
day,
cool.
3 Twins, and then later on 3 Royals. Back
All right.
to back to back.
Well, I got one for you then. I got yesterday.
This will make you feel old. Jermaine Dye was one of them.
Yeah. So, yesterday, in 1974
Hey, Karen.
and in 1975. One happened in 74, one happened in 75.
Could be the Big Red
Both
Machine.
are baseball.
Could be the Big Red Machine.
What are the 2 events? You already got one of them. The first one was Hank Aaron.
Hank Aaron,
passes Babe
715.
Ruth. What is the second one in 1975?
Well, it was first. That was right at the start of the season.
Baseball.
Baseball also.
Was it historical?
Very historical.
Very historical.
Barrier broken. Let's say that.
That's
What'd you say?
Barrier broken. We'll say that. That'll be the clue I'll give you.
Berry or broken?
Barrier.
Barrier.
Broke down a barrier.
Oh, broke a barrier. Okay.
That wasn't Pete Rose's run at the.
Nope.
It's supposed.
Broke a barrier.
Well, somebody either got to
Wait a minute.
manage
Wait a minute.
the game.
Frank Robinson.
Yep. Frank Robinson becomes the first African-American manager in Major League Baseball.
See, I was heading
1
that
year.
direction, and you didn't hit your buzzer.
1 year to the day
Sorry.
of Henry Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's
Okay,
home run
he got
record.
to, he got, Okay.
Yeah, 1975 and 1974.
With was it Cleveland?
Or
Cincinnati?
No, it was not with Cincinnati. Wait a minute. No, I think it was
Baltimore.
It was either Cleveland or Baltimore. And he also was that first year he was a player manager.
Yes.
Then it was
Baltimore. I'm pretty sure.
All right, so here's one more. This one's fun.
Damn, I'm upset that took me that long to figure it out.
Now, this one is not a sports one, but you guys are both pretty smart, and y'all should get this one. There are 4 presidents in the history of the United States whose first name and last name start with the same letter. What are they?
And I say he's got to jump on with Mr. History teacher over there.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson.
Yep.
No. Never mind.
I mean, those are both right.
No, I was going to say Dwight D.
Yeah.
Does that count?
Yeah.
Do you get credit for Henry Harrison?
William Henry Harrison.
If that was William.
Think Depression era.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through them all. Calvin Coolidge.
Yep.
And
Larry Lincoln.
his friends call him Larry.
Everybody else called him Abe. I was his friend. I called him Lawrence.
I'm trying to cycle through them all.
Here I am,
this is gonna
50 years later, and I'm still not getting Larry Lincoln right.
Abraham Lincoln is a kind of fish. That's
the last one's gonna tick you off if you don't get it.
Yeah, I know. Oh man, this is such great TV.
Great TV.
You can get it.
All right, I'm gonna give it to
Yeah,
you.
tell us.
Herbert
Hoover.
Yep, Herbert Hoover
Yeah,
is number 4.
You were fixing to say.
I was
Hoover.
going through the alphabet.
Herbert Hoover.
I was like,
Yep.
G.
Well, what did you think of when you got to Lincoln? You immediately.
I didn't think Lincoln.
You immediately.
I
Thought
know his first name's Abraham.
Yeah.
I have never gotten that right on any history. Still not. I don't
You know
why
what?
I like
You
to
know
call
what's
him
funny?
Larry.
He is claimed by Illinois, but he's actually born in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Knob Creek Bourbon.
Yep, we passed the signs.
Knob Creek Bourbon is named after the creek that ran behind Abraham Lincoln's childhood home.
Where did he grow up? Really?
He
Illinois?
grew up the first part of his life in Kentucky, and then his father married another woman who lived in Illinois, and they moved to Illinois. They lived in, I think lived in Springfield, and then that was where he made his first runs for public office in Illinois. Had a couple of unsuccessful runs for Senate, and he was actually the very first Republican candidate for president in the history of the country, and he won in 1860.
I told you when I listened a few weeks or further back about that gentleman that was playing General Grant and how much knowledge he had of everything. He really was General
Fabulous
Grant.
story.
He really was General Grant. He knew everything about everything in that era, but he was asked the question at the end about the night that Lincoln was assassinated. Should he have been there? He said, we were asked to be there. We declined being there. He said, had I been there, I would have had a bodyguard there as well, and that most likely would have never took place.
There is a legend that there was a man that stopped his horse and cart, and stuck his head inside the carriage to see who was in there, and it was him and his wife, Ulysses Grant, and Patsy maybe was his wife's name. I'll tell you my favorite Ulysses Grant story, and it kind of adds to the whole legend. He was not born Ulysses S. Grant. He actually was born Ulysses H. Grant. And when he got appointed to West Point, he went to West Point to accept his accommodation and enrollment. And they were checking his paperwork, and they said Ulysses S. Grant. And he said, no, sir, my name's Ulysses H. Grant. And the guy checking him in said, are you saying that the federal government's wrong, son? And he said, no, sir. And he said, Ulysses S. Grant. And from that point forward, he was Ulysses S. And that comes back from, his whole nickname of unconditional surrender and, all that kind of stuff. That's where that came from. But the better one, really, is that most people don't understand that there's a really unfortunately for Grant, over the years, it's been, people talk about that he was a terrible president and all that. He really wasn't. He actually was a very good president. But what gets him a bad rap is later in his life, after he left office, he got involved in what was basically the first Ponzi scheme in America, and his family lost all their money because of it. His son got him involved in it, and they lost all their money. So they're basically broke. So this publishing company comes to him, and they want to publish his memoir, and they offer him a sum of money, and he's like, well, let me think about it. Well, he's good friends with Samuel Clemens, who most people know as Mark Twain. So Mark Twain comes to him and says, Mr. President, you can't take that amount. You let me worry about all of that. I'll publish your memoir. You just write it. Twain winds up getting him what was at the time like $500,000, which in modern money is a lot. It was enough to set the grants up for many, many generations. So he commences to writing his memoir. He finishes writing it. He is dying of throat cancer from all the cigars that he had smoked throughout his life. Can't hardly even talk. He finishes writing that memoir mere days before he passes away. But that memoir gets handed, and literally wrote it longhand on notebook paper. And eventually Twain gets a hold of that memoir. It is published.
Was Grant a 1 or 2 term?
He was 2-term president.
Was he?
Yeah, Grant was a 2-term
Well,
president.
then I don't think he was considered to be a terrible president.
Well, but there are,
he got through the second one.
There are, depending on what version of history you
When Lincoln went down, who took his place?
Johnson.
Okay, so it wasn't he.
One of the 2 or 3, who basically is considered one of the 2 or 3 worst presidents of all time. Behind, to me, as a history teacher, the one that I will tell you is the absolute worst president of all time is James Buchanan. Buchanan basically was like Nero watching Rome burn. He sat there and watched the country fall into civil war when he could have done something about it.
The only bachelor president.
Yeah, well,
So
there's a reason for that.
Well,
Buchanan was before Lincoln.
Yes, he was
He's the one that allowed the Civil War to get started.
He could have, because back in those days the election took place in November and the president didn't take office until March, not in January like it is now. And Buchanan did absolutely nothing as the South were, all the southern states were starting to secede from the Union. So when Lincoln took office, or was going to take office in March, they actually snuck him into Washington, D.C. because they were afraid somebody was going to take a shot at him on the train trying to go just to accept trying to go and be inaugurated. So they had to sneak him into the city. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I believe that.
Folks,
We got
go ahead.
5 minutes.
Hit it.
Who's winning the Masters?
So we're doing a fantasy league, me and some of the other coaches, and you get to choose 5. So my one guy is the new guy on. One of my guys is the new guy on PGA Full Swing. The Swedish guy, Ludwig.
Aberg.
Aberg. I got him.
Yeah.
I've got Scotty. I got Bryson DeChambeau. I have Hideki Matsuyama.
Choice, yeah.
Yeah,
he
and
plays
then
well. He's
and then I've got who was my 5th one? I've got 5 really good ones, but I mean, smart money's on Scotty.
Yeah, and there's always that dark horse that nobody's thinking about that's really a quality golfer, and they go out there and they have 3 out of 4 rounds.
It's
when
the
I think
Masters.
about Rory, I was glad to see him finally put one away a few weeks ago, because how many times have we seen him be in contention and fade on the last day, just fade.
Many times.
He's won at Augusta, right?
No, he has not. He's won the other 3.
No.
He has.
He's
He's won.
there.
Yeah.
I would like to think he could put 3 of the 4 rounds
I
together.
think he's capable.
But he can't falter on the 4th day. And the other day, with that confidence that he got one through, it took him the following day, but he did. But we also lose sight of those live players because we don't watch them play, and we don't know who's really striking the ball.
Well, Dustin Johnson always plays well at Augusta National.
So does Rahm.
I tell you,
Rahm is the guy that I think if Scotty doesn't win it, I think Rahm
Rahm.
does, because I think he is so focused to make amends, because he had such a bad year in the majors last year, that I think this is his one. And I'm going to throw a dark horse name out there.
hit it.
Corey Connors.
Yeah.
Just watch him this week.
Well, there's always that person that
He's
we don't,
one.
we
He's
don't
one of the
think much
best
about
ball
that.
strikers
Yes.
in the world, and you have to be a ball striker to win it against
One
him.
that the one that to me, and you wouldn't really call him a dark horse because he's one of the most popular players out there right now. And 5 years ago, I would have told you that I hated his guts, but Bryson DeChambeau has gone through such a image rehabilitation, and he has become this ambassador of the game that I didn't think I would ever see him become. And I think he's somebody that if he can keep that driver in check, could throw down some low numbers.
How did those two with him and Koepka, did their feud fade?
A little bit. They have actually. It's kind of become this fun little banter between the two of them now. I mean, I think in that shootout match, they played with each other. They were having a ball. They were in the cart kidding. I mean, I think maybe more of that got made it than anything. But I'll tell you, it's also Augusta National, so you also have to realize that there's a lot of that old guard that still knows their way around that golf course like nobody's business. Don't be surprised at the end of the first couple of days to see Phil Mickelson's name up there on the board. Don't be surprised to see Fred Couples up there on the board.
Bernard Longer.
I mean,
Couples always
Olathable.
Comes out really well, but he can't play 4 rounds of that golf.
No, because he's old now. But I mean, but don't be surprised to see some of those guys, those early rounds out there.
They know the course.
Dustin Johnson.
They don't scrap like some of them do by not knowing the course.
Oh, Keegan Bradley was my 5th guy. Keegan was my 5th.
He got a hole-in-one at the par 3 today.
Yeah, he was my 5th.
I heard him I was listening to Masters Radio coming over, and apparently they're tracking how many balls these guys hit at the range now. Said Bryson DeChambeau hit 397 today, and most of them were driver as hard as he could swing. It's like, dude, save some of it.
So here's so one last thing before we go. I'm just gonna ask y'all this. So in our little Masters Fantasy League that we did, the tiebreaker is how many total putts do you think will be hit during the Masters?
Oh, total for everybody.
Total putts for everybody.
Ooh.
I didn't get Larry Lincoln right. I'm not going to get that.
Lorenzo Lincoln.
I'm trying to think.
See, I couldn't get the numbers to. I mean, I said 12. Yeah,
144.
144
and
ties.
Everybody plays 2 rounds, so we're looking at about 35 to 40 putts, right?
Yeah, I mean.
So that.
I mean, if they play even par, it's 36 putts.
Yeah. For 100
per player.
For 144 people, so we're looking at what, 3,000?
Yeah.
And then half the field will continue.
Yeah.
So 5,400?
I said 6,000 is what I said.
Well, that front part number's going to be greater
56.
because you're going to have people with terrible scores.
That's why I said
that 3 wasn't even on their
you
card.
can't go the low one. You've got to go.
Yeah, it's got to go high end.
That's probably pretty close.
That's a neat question, though, isn't it? Like
that's probably pretty close.
And I mean, and that's the thing too. There's a lot of tournaments. The U.S. Open every year. It's always up in the air. The PGA is always up in the air. The British Open is always up in the air because you don't know. You know year to year what the course is. You kind of can guess when you look at what the course is. This is what it's going to do. This is what it's going to do. I can promise you, as many years as I've been watching the Masters and how much I love it, that tournament, as it always does, is going to come down to 11, 12, and 13, 16, 17, and 18.
And possibly 15.
Yeah. I mean, that is where...
It's all settled on the backside.
Amen corner.
Yeah.
It is what you do in amen corner and what you do down the stretch.
And that 18's not an easy finish.
God, no. If you've never...
Not easy at all.
I'm telling you, to people that have never been there, if you've never stood down behind that 18th tee box and looked up that fairway, up that hill to number 18, that is an intimidating
So
sight.
once you're out there, even on a decent drive, you're still standing on unequal ground,
and you're going
trying
up.
to put a ball where you think it needs to be, and no telling where it rolls around to, according to what the
what's the
greens
wind
are.
doing? What's the
It's a
that's
tough finishing hole.
And apparently the weather this week is going to be absolutely picture perfect. Chamber of Commerce.
oh yeah,
Now,
70s.
they're loving it down there.
sun. Oh,
they did ask the golfers the other day, due to the storm that came through last fall, knocked out a lot of trees.
And stuff. Yeah,
What most of them said was the course is going to play very similar to the same. He says the only thing you notice is that you can see the course as you're moseying around. You can look off and see the course where the trees had you blocked from seeing the next hole or two.
But any of the trees that were coming to play trees, they actually, in several instances, they transplanted trees. They went in and moved. They went in and took big trees up and moved them
Brought
back
them
to
to
where
that
the
spot.
other one was,
Okay.
because they liked the lay of the
Well,
course.
they must have lost a fair amount of trees.
They
in
did.
that.
They lost quite a bit.
Augusta's got a warehouse full of trees.
Yeah,
just
seriously. What
waiting
are you
around.
talking about? Don't you know the legends? They're out there with.
We got a 70-year-old oak. We're just
They're out
sticking
there
it
with
in
hair dryers, like, drying the bushes off and stuff. I mean, there used to be a legend that there was a caddy there that caddied for 50 some odd years, and he was about half blind. But they said if one of his players hit a ball out into the woods, he knew where it was by the sound of the wood made. Like, he knew what tree to go look for. That he knew the course that well. Well, folks, we thank you for tuning in with us tonight. Obviously, tonight was a little different for us. Y'all know how much we do love other things as well, and getting to talk a little music and movies tonight was a little fun as well. But tune in next week as we kind of get down the stretch drive of the school season. Still a lot of stuff going on. We got golf regions and areas are going to be coming up here in the next couple of weeks. We've got baseball's coming to an end. We've got
new wrestling head coach at Ringgold.
New wrestling head coach at Ringgold. So
was announced today.
Just tune back in with us next week, and we'll get right back to everything. But we appreciate you guys tuning in. We will catch you guys next time around.
Well, the days are short and the nights are long. A room slowly fills with song. All I need is one reminder. Parkway, blue blinders. Well, I begged and cheated and I borrowed for my life upon the road. I'm still looking for some gold at the end of my rainbow. Yes, and someday I will find her on a parkway, blue blinder. On a parkway, blue blinder. Someday I will find her. Yes, and someday I will find her on a parkway, blue blinder. On a parkway, blue blinder. On a parkway. On the parkway, on an autumn day. Yes, and leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade. On the parkway, on an autumn day. Yes, and leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade.